Sit back, relax, and let your mind drift as we begin a journey into one of the oldest, most haunting mysteries ever whispered across human history. The rise and fall of Atlantis. Imagine the world long before maps, long before borders, long before anyone dared to chart the unknown waters beyond familiar shores. Now imagine a memory half myth, half echo carried across oceans, reshaped by centuries of storytellers, scholars, skeptics, and dreamers. A memory of a civilization so advanced, so luminous, so catastrophically doomed, that even its destruction refused to disappear quietly. Tonight, we trace that memory. Some say Atlantis lived only in the imagination of Plato, a philosophical metaphor shaped into a grand tale of hubris and collapse. Others insist the story is older, so old that its origins dissolve into the fog of forgotten ages, woven from fragments of ancient disasters, crumbling shorelines, and civilizations swallowed by time. As you settle into the rhythm of your breath, picture it, a glittering island empire beyond the pillars of Hercules, wrapped in rings of water and land, humming with technology and knowledge that seemed impossible for its era. Picture the sound of it to mark it's alive with strange instruments, canals whispering under moonlit skies, temples towering like mountains carved by human hands. That is the Atlantis the world remembers. But what if the story didn't begin there? What if long before Plato ever wrote a word, memories of volcanic fire, collapsing coastlines, and cities crushed beneath waves formed the backbone of a tale that would survive thousands of years? Some researchers point toward Santorini, where an eruption around 1600 BC ripped apart the Bronze Age world and sent tsunamis crashing across the Mediterranean. Others look to Anatolia, or the Black Sea flood, or even Antarctica, imagining entire continents shifting under the weight of planetary forces. Still others turn to the Azores, the Canary Islands, or submerged plateaus hidden far below the Atlantic surface, searching for clues in the quiet darkness beneath the waves. And as each new theory rises, the mystery deepens. The farther we look into the past, the more Atlantis refuses to settle into one truth. It remains fluid, drifting between archaeology and imagination, between geology and myth. So tonight, as the world around you slows and your thoughts soften, follow this mystery as it unfolds. Because the story of Atlantis is not just about a lost civilization, it is about why we search for it at all. And next, we move to the first clues that shaped the ancient narrative. Clues that would ignite centuries of fascination. Next, we move to the origins of the tale itself, where the first spark of Atlantis enters recorded history, carried not through ruins or artifacts, but through the quiet voice of a philosopher. Plato, writing in the 4th century BCE, claimed the story came from Solon, the famed Athenian lawgiver who had traveled to Egypt generations earlier, in a temple older than anything Greece had ever known. Priests supposedly opened ancient scrolls and spoke of a power that once threatened the world, a great island kingdom beyond the pillars of Hercules, a navy unmatched, a society rich, ordered, and radiant in its early days, until the rot of ambition hollowed it from within. Some believe Plato invented Atlantis purely to teach a moral lesson, a grand allegory wrapped in water and stone. But others suggest he was working from traditions older than memory itself, stories passed down from cultures that had witnessed real catastrophes. As you listen, picture Solon standing beneath torchlight, hearing of a civilization so vast that only catastrophe could erase it. Picture the ink on Plato's tablets, capturing those whispers, shaping them into the story that would echo across millennia. The details he provides are oddly precise, concentric rings of land and water, gleaming metal walls, temples plated in silver, and a sacred central sanctuary where the sea god Poseidon watched over the royal bloodline. The scale is overwhelming: vast plains, towering mountains, a naval force powerful enough to challenge Europe and Asia combined. But even stranger is the timeline. Plato asserts that Atlantis fell 9,000 years before his own era, around 9,500 BCE, a period when most known civilizations had not yet risen. Was this an exaggeration? A symbolic device? Or was Plato preserving a memory from a world far older than archaeology dares to confirm? Some researchers propose that a simple misinterpretation of Egyptian numerals might have stretched centuries into millennia. Others counter that ancient myths often preserve kernels of truth, distorted but not entirely fictional. As you drift deeper into this story, notice how Plato's account stands at the crossroads of fact and myth, precise enough to intrigue scholars, yet mysterious enough to evade confirmation. And in the tension between those boundaries, Atlantis grows ever more alluring. Because if Plato was telling the truth, then somewhere far beyond the known world, a civilization of extraordinary brilliance once rose, and then vanished in a single terrible day and night. And next, we move toward the thinkers who refused to treat that story as mere philosophy, and began searching for Atlantis in the world beneath their feet, from one mystery to the next. We move into the era when the story of Atlantis first escaped the boundaries of philosophy and drifted into the hands of explorers, scholars, and restless minds hungry for answers. By the Renaissance, Europe was awakening to ancient texts with fresh curiosity, and Plato's account, once treated as a metaphor, became a tantalizing possibility. Maps were being redrawn, coastlines reshaped by discovery, and suddenly the world felt large enough to hide entire lost civilizations. Figures like Francis Bacon imagined Atlantis as a model for an ideal society, a beacon of scientific progress shimmering somewhere beyond known horizons. Others began to wonder if the great island kingdom might have once stretched across the Atlantic itself. Sit back, relax deeper into the sound of these ideas, and picture scholars leaning over manuscripts by candlelight, tracing the distances Plato described, comparing them to accounts from sailors who claimed to glimpse strange ruins beneath turquoise waves. Some early thinkers pointed to the Azores, their volcanic peaks rising sharply from the Atlantic as remnants of a larger drowned landmass. Others looked toward the Caribbean, where myths of ancient floods and forgotten peoples seemed to echo the destruction Plato described. The age of exploration fueled imaginations even further, when indigenous cultures of the Americas revealed complex architecture, astronomical knowledge, and vast city networks. Many Europeans wondered if they were descendants of Atlantean survivors. The idea was not supported by evidence, but the mystery of Atlantis had always thrived in the space between what is known and what is hoped for, and so the legend grew. It stretched across continents, leaping from one culture's myths to another's. Stories of great floods from India, China, and the Maya were woven into its fabric, creating a global tapestry of rising seas and vanishing worlds. Some researchers believed this convergence pointed to a real event, perhaps the melting of glaciers at the end of the last ice age, when sea levels rose more than 100 meters, drowning coastlines that once held human settlements. Others remained unconvinced, arguing that myths of destruction are universal not because they share a common source, but because humans everywhere fear the same forces. And as the centuries rolled on, the question only deepened. Was Atlantis a memory of these ancient global floods, or a myth reshaped by the imagination of countless storytellers? Next, we move into the era when science attempted to answer that question and found itself entangled in the same mystery that swallowed the island whole. Next, we move into the age when the tools of science began to probe the legend, an era when explorers, archaeologists, and natural philosophers attempted to separate truth from myth, only to find the mystery growing deeper with every new discovery. The 19th century was a turning point. It was a world electrified by geological breakthroughs, by the birth of archaeology, by the realization that Earth itself had lived through epochs of fire and ice long before human history began. Into this atmosphere stepped Ignatius Donnelly, a congressman turned researcher whose 1882 book, Atlantis, The Antediluvian World, became the most influential attempt to prove the lost civilization real. As you listen, imagine Donnelly hunched over piles of manuscripts, convinced he was assembling a puzzle that stretched back thousands of years. He believed Atlantis was the mother civilization, the source of every ancient achievement from Egypt to the Americas. He claimed its people dispersed after the cataclysm, carrying with them seeds of knowledge, architecture, and myth. Some readers were captivated, others skeptical. But Donnelly's work sparked a new fire. Atlantis was no longer just philosophy. It was a scientific question waiting to be solved. Geological theories of the times speculated about sunken continents, shifting crusts, and lost land bridges. The idea that an entire landmass could rise or fall beneath. The waves seemed plausible in an age when the Earth's history was still being mapped. Even serious scientists entertained the possibility. The Atlantic seafloor, mysterious and unmapped, offered a blank canvas for speculation. And this speculation soon collided with new archaeological discoveries. Minoan palaces on Crete, Mycenaean fortresses in Greece, and ruins revealing civilizations far older and more sophisticated than anyone had expected. Could one of these have been Atlantis? Or were they simply reminders that humanity has risen and fallen many times, leaving behind stories that blend memory with myth? As researchers uncovered evidence of massive volcanic eruptions, continent-shaking earthquakes, and ancient tsunamis, the idea of a real cataclysm seemed less far-fetched. Perhaps Plato had not invented Atlantis. Some argued perhaps he inherited a distorted memory of a real disaster, passed down through generations like an echo from antiquity. Yet for every promising lead, contradictions emerged. Dates didn't align. Locations failed to match Plato's descriptions. Ruins turned out to be younger than expected, or older than believed. Science illuminated the past, but it did not close the case. Instead, it revealed how complex the ancient world truly was. And next, we move toward the moment when the mystery takes an unexpected turn. When Atlantis steps out of science and into the realm of the occult. From one mystery to the next, we move into a turning point that reshaped Atlantis into something far stranger and far more mystical than any ancient philosopher could have imagined. As the 19th century gave way to the 20th, a new wave of thinkers emerged, those who looked beyond archaeology, beyond geology, and into realms of spiritual insight, psychic memory, and ancient cosmic wisdom. At the center of this shift stood Helena Blavatsky, founder of the Theosophical Society, whose monumental 1888 work The Secret Doctrine transformed Atlantis from a lost island into a critical stage of humanity's spiritual evolution. Close your eyes and imagine the way her followers must have felt reading her words. Revelations delivered with absolute certainty, claimed not from documents or ruins, but from access to hidden knowledge said to exist in Tibetan monasteries, preserved by ascended masters and etched into the cosmic record of all human experience. In Blavatsky's telling, Atlantis was not merely a civilization, it was an entire epoch, inhabited by the fourth root race, beings with psychic powers, vast lifespans, and technologies operating through spiritual energy rather than machines. She described cities glowing with crystalline towers, vehicles powered by sound and vibration, and societies bound together through telepathic communication rather than politics or law. For some, these ideas were captivating. For others, they bordered on fantasy. But whether believed or not, they reshaped Atlantis forever. Suddenly, the island was no longer just an archaeological question, it became a symbol of humanity's forgotten spiritual potential, a map of cycles that rise and fall over millions of years. And woven through Blavatsky's story was a warning that Atlantis fell because its people misused their power, turning spiritual knowledge into tools of domination and corruption. As you hear this, notice how her version of the legend preserves Plato's moral core, yet stretches it across cosmic time, giving Atlantis a grandeur and a darkness unmatched by earlier interpretations. Mystics across the Western world embraced these ideas, blending them with visions, seances, and esoteric teachings. To them, Atlantis was not lost, was waiting, hidden in the collective memory of humanity, accessible only through higher consciousness. And yet, with every new layer of myth, the line between truth and symbolism grew thinner. Was Atlantis real, or a metaphor for human potential? A memory or a prophecy? Theosophy didn't answer those questions, but it ensured they would be asked for generations. Next, we move to a thinker who claimed to see Atlantis not through philosophy or mysticism, but through clairvoyance itself. Next, we drift into the strange, hypnotic world of Edgar Cayster, sleeping prophet, whose visions of Atlantis would inspire millions and deepen the mystery in ways few could have predicted. Picture him lying on a simple couch in a quiet room in Virginia Beach, slipping into a trance as stenographers leaned forward, pens ready, waiting for whatever voice would emerge. Between 1923 and 1944, Case delivered thousands of readings, and more than 700 of them spoke of Atlantis with a clarity and confidence that startled even his followers. In his unconscious state, he described a civilization stretching back 200,000 years, rising and falling 3 separate times before its final destruction around 10,500 BCE. He spoke of advanced technology powered by crystals that focused solar and cosmic energies, providing light, transportation, and even communication across vast distances. And with every reading, the imagery grew richer. The great crystal, towering machines humming with unseen forces, flying craft shaped like shimmering globes. According to Case, the Atlanteans were divided into 2 factions, the sons of the law of one, who sought harmony and spiritual evolution, and the sons of Belial, who pursued domination and material power. Their conflict, he claimed, fractured the civilization, leading to misused energy technologies so destructive they destabilized the very land beneath them. Imagine the quiet scratch of a pen as Case murmured descriptions of earthquakes, massive eruptions, and waves tearing across the continent until it sank beneath the ocean. And then imagine the pause, the gentle silence before he shifted to something even stranger, the idea that Atlantean souls reincarnated into the 20th century. drawn back to complete unfinished spiritual lessons. To Case, Atlantis was never just a place. It was a cycle of karma, a story still unfolding. Many dismissed his visions as fantasy, yet his readings inspired expeditions, books, and a renewed obsession with finding physical proof. Some followers became convinced that Atlantean records lay hidden beneath the Sphinx, sealed away in secret chambers. Others searched the Bahamas, where Case predicted ruins would one day surface predictions that fueled decades of investigation into the mysterious Bimini Road, whether psychic revelation or elaborate imagination. Case's Atlantis blurred boundaries between history, spirituality, and prophecy, and as the world listened, one question lingered in the background like a quiet heartbeat. Could any of this be real, or was Atlantis simply mirroring our deepest hopes and fears? Next, we move into a more grounded realm where archaeology stepped forward, determined to test these claims against the silent evidence buried in the earth. From one unfolding mystery to the next, we step into the world of early scientific archaeology, an era when explorers, scholars, and geologists began examining Atlantis not through visions or philosophy, but through layers of earth, stone, and ancient sediment. Sit back, relax, and imagine the shift. Heavy boots on rocky coastlines, brushes sweeping over pottery fragments, survey instruments pointed at distant horizons, all in pursuit of a civilization that might never have existed at all. As the 20th century opened, researchers confronted a difficult truth: if Atlantis had been real, its remains would have to lie somewhere beneath the world's oceans or buried under millennia of geological change. And so the scientific search began. Some investigators turned toward the Mediterranean, focusing on the Bronze Age Minoans of Crete, whose sudden decline around 1600 BCE coincided with one of the largest volcanic eruptions in human history. The island of Santorini, once a thriving civilization, was blown apart with a force more powerful than Krakatoa, sending tsunamis crashing across the region. To some archaeologists, this event felt suspiciously close to Plato's tale, an advanced maritime culture, destroyed in a single day and night by nature's fury. But others countered that the Minoans, impressive though they were, did not match the scale or imperial power Plato described. And so the search widened. Geologists examined shorelines around the Atlantic, hunting for signs of sudden subsidence landmasses that may have sunk beneath the waves 12,000 years ago, around the time Plato claimed Atlantis fell. They mapped the Azores plateau, studied underwater rock formations mistaken for walls or roads, and sifted through sediment cores for evidence of ancient coastlines. Each discovery offered a hint, a whisper, a possibility, but never the proof so many sought. Meanwhile, marine archaeologists used newly developed diving equipment to explore shipwrecks and submerged settlements across the Mediterranean, uncovering cities lost to earthquakes and rising seas, but none that resembled the vast ringed metropolis Plato described. Scientific journals urged caution, reminding researchers that myths often blend fragments of truth with invention. Yet the allure remained. The deeper the experts looked, the more the story seemed to stretch between two opposing poles, one grounded in geology, the other drifting into legend. And so the great question persisted: were these scattered clues remnants of an ancient reality, or simply echoes of the countless civilizations that rose and fell long before recorded history? Next, we move into the heart of scientific critique, where scholars began dissecting Plato's account itself to determine whether Atlantis was ever meant to be taken literally at all. Next, we turn to the scholars, the quiet analysts of texts, languages, and ancient intentions who approached Atlantis not as explorers hunting ruins, but as detectives reading between the lines of Plato's words. Sit back, let your breathing slow, and picture a dim study filled with scrolls, ink, and the soft rustle of pages turning as historians tried to answer a deceptively simple question. Did Plato ever mean for Atlantis to be taken literally? For many classicists, the answer is hidden in the structure of his dialogues, Timaeus and Critias, where the story appears not as history but as a teaching tool, crafted to illustrate deeper philosophical lessons. Some researchers believe Plato intentionally exaggerated the size, age, and grandeur of Atlantis to create the perfect counterpoint to his idealized Athens. Others suggest he drew inspiration from real events, the eruption of Thera, ancient wars, or shifting coastlines, but reshaped them into a symbolic narrative about moral decline and the consequences of unchecked ambition. Imagine a scholar tracing each word with meticulous care, noting how Plato describes Atlantis as a society gifted with wealth and technological marvels, yet slowly corrupted by desire and pride. In this interpretation, the sinking of the island becomes a metaphor for the collapse that follows when a civilization forgets its guiding principles. But the mystery deepens. Plato insists the story came from Solon, who supposedly heard it from Egyptian priests centuries earlier. Some academics argue this chain of transmission is too convenient, too clean, perhaps invented to lend authority to a fictional tale. Others counter that Egyptian traditions did preserve memories of ancient floods and destroyed kingdoms, leaving open the possibility that Plato preserved a distorted echo of a genuine event. And in the quiet corners of libraries, debates stretch late into the night. Was Atlantis a warning, a memory, a puzzle crafted by a philosopher who understood how stories outlive systems, and how myth carries truth even when details are invented? Scholars dissect timelines, calculate distances, and test Plato's numbers, finding some impossibly inflated and others eerily plausible. Yet with every conclusion comes a new contradiction, a new uncertainty that keeps the legend alive. And so, the scholarly world remains divided, suspended between allegory and archaeology, philosophy and possibility. As we leave this world of ancient texts, one question lingers softly in the air. If Plato's tale was symbolic, why did so many later civilizations believe it described something real? Next, we move into the era when natural disasters, earthquakes, and rising seas became the scientific lens through which Atlantis was reconsidered once again. From one unfolding layer of the mystery to the next, we now drift into the world of catastrophic Earth's science volcanoes, earthquakes, and tsunamis, forces so powerful they can erase entire coastlines in a single unstoppable moment. Sit back, settle deeper, and imagine the low rumble of the planet itself, the kind of ancient violence that could have birthed stories of drowned kingdoms long before writing ever existed. Some researchers believe that the roots of the Atlantis legend may lie not in a single event, but in a pattern of destruction woven across history. Take Santorini, the island once known as Thera, where a Bronze Age city was frozen in time beneath ash so fine it preserved frescoes, pottery, and the shapes of doorways as if the people had stepped out moments before the eruption. When that volcano exploded around 1600 BCE, the sky would have turned black, coastlines would have vanished under towering waves, and the reverberations would have echoed across the Mediterranean for generations. To some geologists, this catastrophe matches the emotional weight of Plato's Talon advanced. Maritime civilization wiped out in a night of fire and sea. But others remind us that the Minoans did not vanish overnight. Their decline was complex, stretched across years, layered by politics and trade disruptions. And so the search continues. Scientists turn their eyes toward the Black Sea, where evidence of a massive flood event suggests that thousands of years ago, a sudden breach at the Bosporus sent seawater surging inward, raising the water level by more than 100 meters. Imagine ancient villages clinging to the coastline, only to be swallowed as the sea advanced day after day, transforming valleys into deep, silent waters. Could memories of this flood have traveled across cultures, eventually reshaping into the story of Atlantis? Some researchers say yes. Others argue the Black Sea settlements were simple farming communities, not the luminous empire Plato described. Meanwhile, earthquake belts across the Aegean reveal layers of submerged architecture harbors that sank. Cities half-tilted beneath the waves, evidence that the earth itself has been lifting and lowering land for millennia. Everywhere we look, the planet offers reminders that civilizations are fragile structures balanced on restless ground. And yet none of these disasters fully align with Plato's account. They illuminate possibilities, but never the singular truth. As we drift forward, one question lingers like the last echo of a distant quake. Are these geological clues the scattered memories of Atlantis, or merely shadows of countless worlds lost to time? Next, we move into the heart of the 20th century, when underwater exploration brought new hope and new disappointment to those still searching beneath the waves. Next, we descend beneath the waves themselves, into the cold, silent world of early underwater exploration and era, when new technology promised to finally reveal whether Atlantis slept somewhere on the ocean floor. Sit back, relax into the quiet hum of sonar scans and submersible engines as we enter a time when science felt on the cusp of solving a mystery older than recorded history. In the mid-20th century, oceanography underwent a revolution, as war-era technologies became tools for peacetime research. Sonar mapping began tracing the contours of the seafloor with unprecedented detail. What had once been blank blue voids on nautical charts suddenly transformed into mountains, trenches, and vast plateaus. Among these discoveries was the Azores Plateau, a massive volcanic region stretching across the central Atlantic, its rugged peaks rising above sea level as the Azores. Islands captured the attention of Atlantis. Seekers who believed this highland might once have formed part of a much larger landmass. Some researchers claimed to see geometric shapes in sonar images, long straight lines, rectangular formations, even patterns, they insisted, resembled ancient harbors. To the hopeful, these were ruins. To geologists, they were fractures and volcanic ridges. And so the debate deepened. At the same time, explorers like Jacques Cousteau brought the deep ocean to the public eye with mesmerizing clarity. His submersibles glided across continental shelves, slipped into underwater canyons, and hovered before strange formations that sparked imaginations across the world. When his team explored the Aegean and the Mediterranean seabed, viewers watched in breathless anticipation, hoping to glimpse the unmistakable outline of a sunken city. But what emerged instead were natural formations, impressive, mysterious, but unmistakably geological. And then came the Bimini Road. In 1968, off the coast of the Bahamas, divers discovered long, flat stone blocks arranged in a curving line across the seafloor. Photographs spread rapidly, and many proclaimed the discovery of the first true Atlantean structure. The blocks looked man-made, huge slabs fitted edge to edge, but geologists soon countered that they were beach rock fractured by natural processes, broken into shapes that only appeared architectural. The argument continues to this day, each side certain their interpretation is correct. Yet, as submersibles probed deeper, scanning thousands of kilometers of ocean floor, one truth emerged like a slow, undeniable tide. No vast ringed city lay waiting beneath the waves. And still, the ocean's immensity kept the spark of possibility alive. If 95% of the deep sea remains unexplored, could Atlantis hide somewhere beyond our reach? In the next section, we move to the Mediterranean once more. A volcanic island offered the most compelling retold, parallel to Plato's tale, from one unfolding clue to the next. We return now to the Mediterranean, where one island's more, shattered and beautiful, has become the centerpiece of the most grounded Atlantis theory ever proposed. Sit back, breathe slowly, and imagine the calm blue waters of the Aegean Sea, beneath which lies the scar of a catastrophe so immense it reshaped the ancient world. This is Santorini, once known as Thera, home to a Bronze Age civilization so sophisticated, so vibrant, that some researchers believe it may be the real-world inspiration for Plato's Atlantis. Picture the city of Akrotiri as it once stood, multi-story houses with light wells, vivid frescoes showing fleets of ships and bustling harbors, advanced drainage systems that rivaled those of much later empires. It was a culture deeply connected to the sea, wealthy, artistic, and technologically adept. And then, around 1600 BCE, the island exploded, not with the quiet anger of a typical volcano, but with a force 4 times greater than Krakatoa. The sky would have darkened for days. Waves taller than any building would have raced across the Mediterranean, slamming into Crete, sweeping through coastal settlements, and leaving devastation in every direction. For those who lived through it or heard the stories from refugees, the destruction must have felt apocalyptic. Some archaeologists believe this event, retold through generations, could have evolved into the tale Plato preserved centuries later. An advanced society swallowed by the sea in a single day and night. But here, too, the mystery splits. Akrotiri was advanced, yes, but it was not an empire. Its people left behind no signs of vast military power, no hints of global dominion, and crucially, the timeline is far too late. Plato dates Atlantis to around 9600 BCE, nearly 8,000 years earlier. Some argue the date was mistranscribed, that Egyptian priests may have meant months, not years, which would suddenly align the timeline with the Bronze Age. Others believe Plato deliberately altered the date to push the story into a mythical golden age. And then there is the shape. Plato described a city built in concentric circles of land and water. Santorini, after the eruption, formed a giant ringed caldera. It is an eerie parallel so close, it almost feels intentional. And yet, no inscriptions mention Atlantis. No invasion of Athens. No evidence of a vanished superpower. So the question remains, was Santorini merely a tragic echo of a much older story, or the very heartbeat beneath the myth? Next, we move westward to Spain and its marshlands where satellite images hint at another possible birthplace of the Atlantis legend. Next, we drift westward, leaving the shattered caldera of Santorini behind as we cross the Mediterranean and approach the silent marshlands of southern Spain, a place where the land meets the sea in shifting patterns of mud, sand, and buried memory. Sit back and picture it, a vast, shimmering expanse, still and reflective at sunrise, hiding beneath its quiet surface the outlines of shapes that should not exist in nature. It was here, in the Dinana National Park near the mouth of the Guadalquivir River, that satellite images first revealed strange circular forms, rectangles, and geometric shadows beneath layers of sediment. To some researchers, particularly the German explorer Rainer Kuhn, these shapes looked uncannily like the city layout described by Plato, alternating circles of land and water, arranged with mathematical precision as if an ancient engineer had set the blueprint into the earth itself. The images electrified the Atlantis community. They seemed exact, too deliberate, to belong to marshland alone. Some believed the region might once have been a bustling port in antiquity, perhaps connected to the mysterious Tartessosa, wealthy Bronze Age culture described by Greek writers as ancient, powerful, and lost. Was Tartessos Atlantis under another name? Or was it simply another civilization swallowed by time, later folded into Plato's tale through rumor and exaggeration? Archaeologists approached the Dinana site with cautious curiosity. Ground-penetrating radar detected subsurface anomalies that hinted at buried structures, walls, or foundations, yet the marshes made excavation nearly impossible. Every attempt to dig was halted by the region's protected status, leaving the mystery suspended beneath mud and water with no way to confirm or deny its secrets. Arguments spread like ripples. Some scientists insisted the patterns were natural formations produced by shifting tides and ancient riverbed. Others pointed to pottery fragments and stone tools found nearby, suggesting that human settlement once thrived along a coastline now long submerged. And then there was the proximity to the Pillars of Hercules, the ancient name for the Strait of Gibraltar, exactly where Plato placed the gateway to Atlantis. It was a tantalizing alignment, close enough to feel convincing, yet incomplete enough to keep doubt alive. As the sun sets over those quiet marshlands, the shapes beneath the water remain still and inscrutable, refusing to reveal their meaning. Are they the last remnants of a forgotten port, a misinterpreted mirage of nature, or the buried skeleton of Atlantis itself? That unanswered question pulls us onward. Next, we journey into the Black Sea, where one of the most dramatic flood events in human prehistory may hold yet another piece of the puzzle. From one submerged memory to the next, we now drift toward the Black Sean inland sea, whose dark, quiet depths hold a catastrophic secret that some researchers believe may lie at the very root of the world's great flood myths. Sit back, relax, and imagine the shoreline as it once was. Not a vast body of salt water, but a freshwater lake, calm and shallow, surrounded by early farming communities who lived peacefully along its fertile banks more than 7,500 years ago. Life there would have felt stable, predictable until the day everything changed. According to the Black Sea deluge hypothesis proposed by geologists William Ryan and Walter Pittman in the 1990s, the Mediterranean Sea once sat far higher than the Black Sea basin. And then, in a single moment of geological violence, the natural wall at the Bosporus Strait gave way. Picture it, a roar like thunder, water rushing with the force of dozens of waterfalls combined, surging inward at a rate no human could outrun. The flood would have poured into the Black Sea basin with unimaginable speed, raising the water level by more than 100 meters and drowning nearly 100,000 square kilometers of former land. Entire villages would have vanished beneath the waves, leaving only the memory of a world wiped away. As the theory gained momentum, underwater explorers like Robert Ballard, famous for discovering the wreck of the Titanic, began surveying the Black Sea floor. There, preserved in the oxygen-starved depths, they found strangely intact remains, wooden structures, tools, and hints of human life dating to around the time of the proposed flood. These discoveries didn't reveal a great empire or advanced technology, but they did prove something remarkable. The Black Sea had indeed swallowed settlements whole. Some researchers believe these refugees may have carried their memories of sudden destruction across the Mediterranean and beyond, where the story told and retold could have evolved into legends of great floods, drowned kingdoms, and civilizations lost in a single catastrophic night. Others argue that the Black Sea communities were too small, too simple, too humble to become the foundation for Plato's Atlantis. The timing is closer, but the scale is not. And yet the idea lingers like a quiet whisper beneath the waves, that perhaps the story of Atlantis is a patchwork of memories from many such floods, stitched together across cultures until it formed something grander, older and more mythic than any one event alone. As we leave the Black Sea behind, the water stills once more, holding its secrets tightly. Next, we turn toward the deep Atlantic, where seafloor plateaus and volcanic islands spark some of the most persistent and controversial claims about Atlantis' true resting place. Next, we push out into the open Atlantic, into waters deeper, darker, and more mysterious than any coastline or inland sea. Sit back and imagine the endless blue stretching in all directions, an ocean so vast it feels capable of hiding entire worlds beneath its shifting surface. For centuries, this is exactly where believers placed Atlantis, not in the Mediterranean, not in the Black Sea, but far out in the great ocean that bears its name. Much of this theory revolves around the Azores Plateau, a massive volcanic rise in the Mediterranean. Today, only the highest peaks breach the surface as the Azores Islands, but sonar mapping reveals an enormous underwater landscape, ridges, valleys, and uplifted blocks that seem almost like the foundation of a sunken continent. Early oceanographers, working with imprecise tools, sometimes interpreted these formations as walls, steps, and ruins. To the hopeful, this was enough. They imagined Atlantis stretching across this plateau, a flourishing civilization eventually swallowed when Ice Age glaciers melted and sea levels rose by more than 100 meters. Some researchers even proposed that sections of the plateau once stood above the water, forming a chain of islands large enough to support Plato's grand description. And yet, with each new generation of scientific tools, the picture grew clearer and less supportive. High-resolution sonar revealed that many structures once thought artificial were natural fractures in volcanic basalt, shaped by cooling, cracking, and centuries of erosion. The linear patterns were tectonic. The rectangles were coincidence. The roads were nothing more than parallel ridges formed by lava flowing and solidifying in layers. Still, the Atlantic did not surrender all of its mysteries, when divers explored the Canary Islands and Madeira, they found stone structures built by the ancient Guanche people, pyramids, terraced walls, and burial chambers that seemed to echo architectural styles found in distant cultures. Some enthusiasts interpreted this as evidence of Atlantean survivors spreading their knowledge after their homeland sank. Mainstream archaeologists disagreed, pointing out that the Guanche culture began far too late to be connected to Plato's timeline. Yet, the sense of something older lingers in these islands, the feeling that these volcanic peaks once belonged to a world far larger than what remains. Geological evidence demonstrates that parts of the Atlantic seafloor have indeed risen and fallen across deep time, but not within the span of human history. No vast landmass collapsed in 9600 BCE, at least not according to modern tectonic models. And still the question persists. If the Atlantic is truly innocent of Atlantis, why does it feel like the story belongs here, drifting somewhere between imagination and possibility? Next, we move to one of the most controversial theories of all, one that shifts Atlantis not into warm waters, but into the frozen silence of the far south. From one extreme of the world to another, we now descend into a theory as cold and unsettling as the continent it invokes. Sit back, let the sound soften around you, and imagine the frozen vastness of Antarctica, place so silent, so untouched, that it feels like the perfect vault for a civilization erased from memory. This is the Antarctica hypothesis, made famous by Charles Hapgood in the mid-20th century. A theory that proposed something radical, that Earth's crust could shift rapidly over the mantle, sliding entire continents into new positions almost overnight. According to Hapgood, Antarctica was once located in a temperate zone, a place of forests, rivers, and perhaps even cities before a sudden crustal displacement thrust it into the deep south around 12,000 years ago. If true, this would place its transformation eerily close to the date Plato gave for Atlantis's destruction. Some even pointed to strange features on ancient maps, like the famous Peary race map of 1513, which appears to show a detailed coastline of Antarctica free of ice. How, they asked, could a medieval map maker have charted a landmass humans didn't officially discover until 1820? And how could he show the shoreline as it might have looked before it was sealed beneath 2 kilometers of ice? To those who believed in Atlantis, the answer felt obvious. Someone, in some distant age, had mapped Antarctica long before it froze, perhaps the Atlanteans themselves. But as geology advanced, the theory began to crack. Ice core samples revealed that Antarctica has been locked in polar conditions for at least 15 million years, far longer than humans have existed. Fossil evidence shows the continent was once warm, but in epochs unimaginably distant, separated from our timeline by millions of years. Even so, Hapgood's idea refused to fade. Researchers fascinated by Earth's shifts pointed to the sudden climate changes at the end of the last ice age, the mysterious global temperature spike, the mass extinctions, the rapid sea rise, and wondered whether something catastrophic had indeed occurred. Could crustal displacement have happened in a lesser form, unrecognized yet still powerful enough to distort coastlines and wipe out civilizations? Most scientists say no, but fringe researchers still whisper about magnetic anomalies, subglacial lakes, and mountains buried beneath the ice whose shapes look uncannily geometric. And then there are the mysteries hidden under Antarctica's frozen crust, entire mountain ranges discovered only recently by radar, and structures of rock buried so deep no one has touched them in millions of years. As we drift away from the icy silence of the far south, one question remains suspended like a cold breath in the air. Could a world lie hidden beneath that ancient ice, waiting for the right moment to reveal its truth? Next, we return to the human world, to pop culture, pulp fiction, and the storytellers who turned Atlantis from a legend into a global phenomenon. Next, we rise from the frozen stillness of Antarctica and return to the warm, flickering glow of human imagination, an arena where Atlantis truly found its second life. Sit back, let your mind drift, and picture a world before the age of movies or digital screens, when stories spread through ink, lantern light, and the whispered excitement of readers hungry for adventure. It was here, in the late 19th century, that Atlantis shifted from a philosophical puzzle into a cultural force. Jules Verne lit the spark first. In 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, he carried readers into the abyss aboard the Nautilus, where Captain Nemo glided past the haunting ruins of a drowned city. Verne never claimed these ruins were real. Yet the way he described them, the fallen pillars, the silent avenues, the feeling of a civilization frozen in eternal twilight, etched the image of underwater Atlantis into the world's imagination. Soon after, H.P. Blavatsky and the Theosophists infused Atlantis with mysticism, but it was the rise of pulp fiction that truly transformed it. Imagine cheap paper magazines stacked in smoky shops, covers splashed with bright, impossible cities, crystal towers, and warriors gazing over the oceans of a lost age. Writers like Robert E. Howard wove Atlantis into vast prehistoric timelines, linking it to the Hyborian age of Conan. In these stories, Atlantis became a cradle of power, magic, and decadence. Its fall, a warning and a promise. Sword and sorcery tales painted the Atlantean as a mighty survivor, a relic of a world swallowed by tragedy, yet alive in the bloodlines of heroes. And as comic books emerged, Atlantis stepped onto a new stage. DC Comics reimagined it as a technologically advanced underwater kingdom, home to Aqua. Marvel built a rival vision beneath the waves with the Submariner, Nama half-human, half-Lantean, torn between two worlds. Through bright panels and dramatic battles, these artists gave Atlantis a face, a people, a culture. Slowly, the myth detached from Plato, becoming something bigger, stranger, and more emotionally resonant. It wasn't just a lost city anymore. It was a symbol, reflection of our longing for forgotten wisdom, our fear of collapse, and our belief that somewhere, beneath the surface of time, lies a civilization more extraordinary than our own. And as the world embraced film and television, those images only grew sharper, more immersive, more irresistible. Next, we move into that cinematic era where Atlantis became not just a story, but a spectacle crafted in glowing color and sweeping underwater worlds. From the pulpy pages of early magazines, we now drift gently into the blue-lit glow of television and the shimmering spectacle of cinema, where Atlantis evolved once again, big, brighter, and more hypnotic than ever before. Sit back, relax, and picture the soft hum of an old television set. The flickering static resolving into images of submarines, divers, and impossible underwater ruins. It was in the mid-20th century that Atlantis slipped into living rooms across the world, reshaped by budget limitations, creative ambition, and the growing hunger for stories about the unknown. Shows like Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea used Atlantis as a backdrop for thrilling encounters, ancient machines awakening beneath the waves, forgotten cities glowing in eerie neon light. Even when the sets looked simple, the idea they carried remained powerful. A civilization so old, so advanced, it still hummed beneath the oceans, waiting. Then came The Man from Atlantis in the 1970s, a series that reimagined the lost continent not through ruins, but through a living survivor. Patrick Duffy's character, Mark Harris, became the first Atlantean many viewers had ever seen. Web-fingered, superhuman, caught between two worlds. Each episode offered a mixture of wonder and melancholy, suggesting that Atlantis hadn't simply collapsed, it had changed, adapted, endured, but it was animation and film that would push the myth to new depths. Disney's Atlantis, The Lost Empire, arrived in 2001, carrying with it a bold new vision. Imagine cavernous chambers glowing with crystal lights, skyscraper-like structures rising from volcanic stone, and an entire city suspended beneath the earth like a forgotten jewel. This Atlantis blended archaeology with fantasy, diesel punk machinery with ancient mysticism, and deep linguistic research with sweeping adventure. The Atlanteans were reimagined as guardians of a living energy source, a civilization both futuristic and primordial. For many viewers, this became the definitive image of the lost world. Meanwhile, the rise of CGI opened doors older storytellers could only dream of. Films like The Abyss and Aquaman crafted entire underwater kingdoms with fluid motion, drifting particles, and towering architecture, turning the ocean into a glowing cathedral of the unknown. Every bubble, every glimmer of light, every murky silhouette added to the sense that something enormous might be resting just beyond the continental shelf. And in that cinematic darkness, Atlantis no longer needed proof, simply felt real. But as movies expanded the vision, a new world began to take shape, one even more interactive, immersive, and personal. Next, we move into the realm of video games, where players didn't just watch Atlantis, they stepped inside it, from cinema's sweeping vistas. We descend now into a world where the audience is no longer just watching, they are moving, exploring, choosing their path through shadowed ruins and submerged halls. Sit back, breathe slowly, and imagine the soft glow of a loading screen fading into an endless underwater world. This is the realm of video games, where Atlantis became not just a story, but a place players could touch, traverse, and uncover at their own pace. As technology evolved, game developers discovered that Atlantis was the perfect canvas, an empty map filled with limitless potential. Early adventure titles teased the myth through pixelated temples and blocky underwater caverns. But as graphics improved, the visions sharpened. Tomb Raider sent players diving beneath ancient waters to uncover Atlantean relics guarded by forgotten mechanisms and strange half-living constructs. The feeling of brushing past sunken pillars, hearing only distant echoes, created a new kind of immersion the old mediums couldn't provide. Assassin's Creed went further, weaving Atlantis into a vast tapestry of ancient conspiracies, artifacts of impossible power, and architectural wonders that glowed with luminous energy. Players walked through towering chambers, activated dormant machines, and gazed out over sweeping Atlantean landscapes crafted with near-archaeological precision. For many, this was the first time Atlantis felt truly alive, not as a ruin, but as a functioning civilization layered with secrets. When online worlds emerged, Atlantis expanded again. Games like World of Warcraft sculpted entire underwater zones, kelp forests swaying in slow currents, bioluminescent cities shimmering in the dark, enormous statues half buried in coral. Thousands of players swam through these environments together, exploring ruins that felt both ancient and strangely familiar. Each structure, each luminous glyph, echoed the same persistent question: what if Atlantis never vanished at all, but waited beneath us, silent and intact? The interactive nature of gaming allowed players to shape their own relationship with the myth. They solved puzzles, deciphered languages, and battled guardians that suggested a civilization both advanced and mysterious. In this medium, Atlantis wasn't limited by evidence or theory, it grew, adapted, became whatever the imagination could sustain. And yet, just as games deepened the immersion, another form of storytelling arose that blurred the line between entertainment and authority. Next, we move to the world of documentary television, where Atlantis returned not as fiction, but as something presented with the solemn tone of historical discovery blurring fact, fantasy, and fascination in ways that would shape public imagination for decades. From one realm of immersion to the next, we rise from the digital depths of gaming and step quietly into the glowing studio. Lights of documentary television where Atlantis took on a new identity, one wrapped in authoritative narration, atmospheric music, and visuals designed to blur the boundary between speculation and science. Sit back, relax, let your breathing slow, and picture the scene, a slow pan across turbulent seas, a stern voice whispering, "What if the greatest story ever told was true?" In the late 20th century, documentaries transformed Atlantis from a myth into a mystery that seemed almost within reach. The History Channel, Discovery Channel, National Geographic, these platforms wielded a kind of cultural authority that allowed theories once considered fringe to drift into mainstream consciousness. Producers knew that Atlantis carried built-in drama, lost worlds, catastrophic destruction, forbidden knowledge, and so they crafted episodes filled with dramatic recreations, gleaming temples collapsing beneath rising waves, priests in white robes gazing toward ominous skies, crystals pulsing with strange inner light. These scenes were often paired with expert interviews, or at least people filmed in ways that made them appear as experts. Dim lighting, serious expressions, shelves of ancient books in the background. Slowly, calmly, the line between established evidence and imaginative speculation became softened, blurred, wrapped in an inviting tone. Some programs focused heavily on the Mediterranean hypothesis, showing divers swimming through the ruins of Santorini, while somber narration suggested these broken stones might be fragments of an Atlantean metropolis. Others leaned into the Caribbean theories, lingering on the Bimini Road while drone shots circled overhead like curious birds. And then came the most influential wave of all, the ancient astronaut programs. Atlantis, they suggested, was not merely a lost civilization. It was a testament to extraterrestrial intervention. Gleaming spacecraft descending into primordial oceans, beings of immense intelligence guiding early humanity. Temples aligned with the stars to mark forgotten cosmic events. Whether viewers believed these claims or not mattered less than the atmosphere these shows created. An intoxicating blend of scientific language, imaginative visuals, and the soft, persistent promise that revelation was close. In living rooms around the world, late at night, people found themselves leaning forward, wondering what other secrets might be hiding beneath the waves. And just as documentaries shaped belief, another force soon amplified these emerging ideas, one far more decentralized, immediate, and limitless. Next, we move to the rise of internet culture, where Atlantis became a global conversation, a digital obsession, and a myth reborn for an entirely new age. From the glowing screens of documentary television, we drift seamlessly into a place far louder, faster, and endlessly more chaotic, the digital ocean of internet culture, where Atlantis found new life not through experts or filmmakers, but through millions of curious minds connected across the world. Sit back, relax, breathe deeply, and imagine scrolling down a page lit only by the blue-white glow of your device, as post after post whispers the same familiar promise. What if Atlantis was real? With the rise of forums, social media, and video platforms, the myth escaped the control of traditional storytellers. Anyone could propose a theory, unveil a blurry photograph of supposed ruins, or share a personal dream that felt strangely ancient. On early message boards, users exchanged satellite images, speculated about underwater anomalies, and debated passionately about the validity of every ridge, stone, and shadow on the ocean floor. The tone was collaborative, electric, fueled by the thrill of discovery. YouTube magnified this energy. Suddenly, Atlantis videos with dramatic titles and atmospheric music racked up millions of views. Some creators explored the myth through calm, meditative narration. Others embraced sweeping conspiracies involving ancient aliens, forgotten technologies, and government cover-ups. The internet rewarded mystery, rewarded speculation, rewarded any claim that made the audience lean just a little closer to the screen. And while many ideas contradicted each other, they all shared one premise. Atlantis could be anywhere, and anyone could be the one to find it. Reddit communities analyzed satellite imagery pixel by pixel. TikTok creators presented fast-paced micro-documentaries about ruins, energy grids, or suspiciously geometric patterns beneath the Atlantic. Meanwhile, blogs and independent researchers built beautifully designed websites presenting their interpretations of Plato's text, complete with diagrams, timelines, and maps. In this digital tide, Atlantis became more than a myth. It became a participatory world-building project. The myth adapted to each generation's fears and hopes. Climate change discussions intertwined with theories about rising seas swallowing ancient cultures. New Age communities connected Atlantis to reincarnation, consciousness, and forgotten spiritual abilities. Tech enthusiasts imagined it as a society that achieved sustainable energy thousands of years before modern science. And through it all, the internet kept the story alive, shifting, mutating, expanding. Every new image, every shared idea, every whispered possibility became another drop in an ocean of speculation. And as this digital wave rose, another force quietly stepped forward, one that merged entertainment with authority and brought the myth dangerously close to reality. Next, we move to the age of streaming platforms and independent creators, where Atlantis became not just a mystery, but a profitable empire of content reaching millions every day. From the restless tide of internet culture, we drift now into a world where the line between entertainment and investigation dissolves entirely. Sit back, relax, and imagine the quiet hum of a streaming platform loading a new episode, sleek visuals, atmospheric sound design, and a narrator whispering promises of ancient truths. This is the era where Atlantis became a thriving ecosystem of independent creators. Full-scale documentary series and cinematic deep dives designed to captivate audiences for hours at a time. Streaming platforms opened the gates wide, allowing any filmmaker, theorist, or storyteller with a camera and a compelling angle to build their own Atlantis universe. Unlike traditional television, these creators were not bound by tight schedules or network restrictions. They could stretch episodes into hour-long explorations of a single anomaly, or entire seasons into methodical investigations of mysterious ruins scattered across the globe. Many blended drone footage of rugged coastlines with dramatic reenactments and computer-generated reconstructions of glittering Atlantean cities. The tone was soothing, hypnotic, drawing viewers into a dreamlike state where long-forgotten civilizations felt just within reach. Independent creators on YouTube embraced the same approach, crafting videos that combined slow, cinematic pacing with discoveries framed as hidden, suppressed, or deliberately ignored by mainstream scholars. Viewers were invited to join the investigation, to weigh the evidence themselves, to consider whether the world's oceans truly hide a forgotten chapter of human history. The algorithm rewarded curiosity, and soon millions were watching late into the night, lulled by calm narration and the rhythmic pulse of underwater soundscapes. Some creators leaned into science, presenting sonar scans, geological studies, and deep-sea footage as clues. Others embraced mythic speculation, weaving narratives that connected Atlantis to global flood myths, advanced technologies, and civilizations separated by oceans yet united by architecture and astronomical alignments. What made this era different was the atmosphere as soft, reflective, almost meditative. Atlantis became a place of calm mystery, a landscape explored through gentle music and deliberate pacing. And as streaming platforms grew, so did the sophistication of their depictions. High-budget docuseries rendered Atlantis in gleaming crystalline spires, colossal temples, and labyrinthine underwater corridors, illuminated by shafts of shimmering blue light. The civilization felt alive, tangible, cinematic. Yet even as these shows crafted increasingly elaborate interpretations, they never answered the central question. Instead, they leaned into the unknown, offering viewers the pleasure of drifting deeper into mystery. And from this audiovisual world, we move next into a realm shaped by emotion and urgency where Atlantis becomes a mirror for our fears about the planet we inhabit today. From the soft glow of streaming documentaries, we move now into a world shaped not by imagination alone, but by the quiet anxiety humming beneath modern life. Sit back, relax, ease into your breathing, and picture the Earth as it is today: warming seas, rising tides, storms more powerful than any in living memory. In this fragile present, Atlantis becomes more than myth. It becomes a warning echoing across time. As the planet changes, contemporary storytellers revisit the lost civilization through the lens of environmental fear and hope, imagining Atlantis as a society undone not by gods or cosmic forces, but by the consequences of its own ambition. Some researchers suggest that if Atlantis existed, its fall may have mirrored the patterns we see now: coastlines shrinking, cultures uprooted, sudden climatic shifts swallowing entire settlements. Others interpret the myth as an early allegory for ecological collapse, a tale about a civilization that mastered technology, yet ignored the delicate balance that sustains life. In this interpretation, the roaring waves that consumed Atlantis feel less like fantasy and more like prophecy. Modern narratives emphasize this parallel, lingering on images of sunken streets overgrown with coral, ancient towers buried under drifting silt, and the lingering silence of a world that once flourished. Environmental writers weave these images into meditative reflections on our own trajectory, asking whether humanity is unknowingly retracing the same steps toward oblivion. Meanwhile, a different kind of storyteller imagines Atlantis not as a failed civilization, but as one that achieved harmony with nature, a place powered by renewable energy, guided by spiritual ecology, and built with materials that breathed with the earth rather than fought against it. In these visions, Atlantean crystal technology becomes a metaphor for clean, limitless power. Their architecture becomes a blueprint for sustainable design. Their downfall, in these versions, is not caused by environmental neglect, but by external catastrophe, suggesting that even the most enlightened societies remain vulnerable to forces beyond their control. Whether tragic warning or utopian model, Atlantis becomes a mirror held up to modern civilization, a reminder that all societies, no matter how advanced, rest on fragile foundations. And as these environmental interpretations ripple outward, they blend quietly with another deeper current running through the myth of fascination with technology itself, and the belief that ancient civilizations may have held knowledge far beyond what we imagine. Next, we move into those technological mysteries, where crystals, machines, and impossible inventions form the heart of Atlantis's most alluring legends. From the rising tide of environmental warnings, we now drift deeper into the other half of Atlantis's hypnotic duality, the part that speaks not of collapse, but of impossible brilliance. Sit back, relax, and let your mind settle into the quiet hum of imagined machinery as we enter the world of Atlantean technology, where crystals glow like captive stars and ancient engines whisper with forgotten power. For generations, storytellers, researchers, and dreamers have been drawn to the idea that Atlantis wasn't merely advanced, it was different, operating on principles far beyond the mechanical logic that drives modern science. Some describe vast power crystals suspended at the heart of gleaming towers, pulsing in rhythm with the earth itself. Others imagine vehicles that hovered effortlessly above the ground, guided not by fuel or gears, but by the focused intent of trained minds. A few propose that Atlantean engineers understood harmonic frequencies so deeply they could shape metal, lift stones, or generate energy simply by aligning sound with crystalline structures. These ideas, whether grounded in theosophy, psychic readings, or speculative science, all share one thing: the belief that Atlantis unlocked a form of technology that merged the physical and the spiritual into a single system. Not machines controlled by humans, but machines connected to them. Some researchers suggest that if such technology existed, it might have been so advanced that modern eyes would misinterpret it as magic or myth. Others counter that these descriptions reflect symbolic teachings rather than literal inventions. And yet, the allure remains. Picture ancient laboratories carved from polished stone, lit by soft blue radiance. Picture crystalline conduits humming with unseen energy. Picture engineers who were also mystics, scientists who were also philosophers, each innovation guided by ethical principles that bound power to wisdom. But even within these beautiful visions lies a shadow. Many versions of the myth claim that as Atlantean society declined, their technology remained powerful, too powerful. Machines once meant for healing became tools of control. Crystals once tuned to harmony began amplifying greed, division, and violence. The same energy that elevated the civilization may have torn it apart. And this lingering tension between brilliance and danger between, what humanity can create and what it should create, continues to give the myth its timeless weight. For Atlantis is not just about what was lost, but what we fear we might lose again. And from this glowing, mysterious world of ancient invention, we move now to the final chapter of our journey, a reflection on why Atlantis endures, why it refuses to fade, and why the story still whispers to us across the ages now. As we drift toward the final stretch of this long, twilight journey, let your breathing slow, your thoughts settle, and imagine the entire story of Atlantis stretching out behind you like a trail of faint, glowing lights under deep water. We've moved through its origins, its echoes in ancient memory, its archaeological puzzles, its reinventions in science fiction, fantasy, comics, film, games, and the shifting fears of the modern world. And with all of that laid before us, one last lingering question rises gently to the surface. Why does Atlantis endure? Some researchers believe the answer lies in the psychological depths of the myth, in its perfect blend of hope, loss, power, and humility. Others suggest the story persists because it fills a space that science and history, in their precision, can never fully occupy, the space where longing and imagination meet. Atlantis is the whisper that humanity carries within itself, the idea that somewhere, sometime, we were more than we are now, or that one day we might be again. As you relax into this final moment, picture the myth not as a single island, but as a constellation of meanings scattered across time. To philosophers, it became a warning about moral decay. To explorers, it was a destination waiting beneath the waves. To esoteric thinkers, it was a cradle of hidden wisdom. To scientists, it became a test of evidence and method. To artists and filmmakers, it offered endless light and color and sound. To dreamers, it became a doorway to possibility. And to countless people simply lying awake at night, much like you may be now, it became a quiet companion, a gentle mystery to rest the mind upon. In many ways, Atlantis has survived precisely because it was never pinned down. It lives in the fluid space between fact and metaphor, where it can shift as humanity shifts. When we fear collapse, Atlantis becomes a warning. When we crave meaning, it becomes a memory. When we imagine the future, it becomes an inspiration. It is a mirror reflecting whichever age looks into it. And maybe that is why, after thousands of years, the myth still glows softly in the collective imagination, because it doesn't just tell a story about a lost world. It tells a story about us. So as we close this final chapter, let the mystery settle comfortably around you like a warm, dark tide. Atlantis may rise and fall in stories, but its message, its beauty, and its quiet, haunting presence drift on, whispering through time. And somewhere, deep beneath the ocean of our shared imagination, the lost city sleeps on,